And joining us now, MSNBC political analyst, Democratic strategist Basil Smikle, and Republican strategist Susan Del Percio. Always great to see both of you. Let's talk about the beefsteaks, because all eyes are on this decision. Susan, we know Kamala Harris is expected to be with her running mate as soon as Tuesday in Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro's home state, although she's meeting with a number of contenders this weekend, we're told. Who do you have your eye on?
Just two. Josh Shapiro, governor of Pennsylvania, and Senator Mark Kelly out of Arizona.
Why do they stand out to you?
Because I think they both bring the most to the table. They're both respected moderates, first of all, which will be appealing to another group that Harris will have to appeal to, those anti-Trump voters who have to get off the couch and go vote. But Shapiro, great in Pennsylvania, 61% approval rating. I mean, that's just off the charts. Good chance he could deliver it. However, I don't see how he plays in what other states he could play well in. Whereas Arizona, half the electoral delegates, but it's a border state. And Mark Kelly has such a great story to tell. He's a combat fighter. He's a former astronaut. His wife, Gabby Giffords, survived a shooting, and he and her have just been out there on gun safety. I think he plays in more time zones, maybe, is what I'm trying to say, than Josh Shapiro. And not because of the personalities, just because of the resume.
But, of course, there's also the issue of the control of power in the Senate, and he's
right.
a senator,
just
so
one other,
that could be
and just
a
one other thing.
Right?
Well, yes and no, because a lot of people, because the Senate's so close and Joe Manchin's not running in West Virginia, it's kind of seen that the Senate probably will flip. There's just too good of a chance of it happening. But one other thing I should have mentioned about Kelly is immigration reform. It's a border state. And he's really good on the issue.
And he voted as a senator for that bipartisan deal that was rejected by a lot of the Republicans in the Senate. Basil, as Eli mentioned, Donald Trump's really kind of downplayed the VP, the running mate position. And, of course, that comes as J.D. Vance has been in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons lately for controversial comments he's made in the past. Right. What do you think? How crucial is this pick for Kamala Harris?
So I agree with everything that Susan said in terms of the geographic benefits to different picks. I focus more on, or not more, but also on the synergy and energy. You know, there's a tremendous amount of momentum behind Kamala Harris right now. And one thing that I don't want to have happen is somebody that sort of deflates that a little bit, because their style's a little different. Their sort of joint energy's a little different. So I'm looking for someone who's going to complement her in the sense that she has a lot of energy on the trail. People are really getting behind her. Is this a person that is also going to generate some of that energy? Is this a person that she does see as a good governing partner and someone who's actually good at defending her? Because she's going to take a lot of the shots. She's already taking a lot of shots. And so is this a person that's going to be able to go into crowds, that's going to be able to go on TV and really articulate a strong defense of her, a strong affirmation of her candidacy? The one person that I think can do that, in addition to those that Susan mentioned, is Pete Buttigieg. Because if you listen to Pete Buttigieg on TV talking about the ticket when it was Biden-Harris, and I'd love to see him be able to talk about Harris as the top of the ticket, even if whether he's the vice presidential candidate or not. He is an extraordinarily good sort of person on camera and in communities, and excites a lot of young people. And I think that's a constituency that really needs a little boost right now.
You mentioned the attacks that Harris is taking. So much of the conversation on those attacks this week have been from Donald Trump's comments and his ongoing doubling down, leaning into these attacks on her race, her racial identity as a black woman, even reposting new birther conspiracy theories about her. What do you make of the turn this race has taken?
Well, people have said, well, this is Donald Trump just walking into something, didn't know what he was doing, made a mistake. This has always been who he is.
Yes.
It's always been who he was.
Absolutely.
The birther comments and conspiracy started with Barack Obama, 2007, 2008. This is not new. What is interesting is to watch him flail in his inability to find something that sticks against her, because everything that he's tried has become a tentpole moment for the Harris campaign and her supporters as a moment to sort of rally around her. You think about the Black Jobs comment, that became a thing. This notion that she just became Black, well, now everybody's like, hey, when did you become Black? When did I become Black, right? So now we're talking about it in a way he didn't want us to. He wanted African Americans to talk about what it means to be Black, thinking he's the arbiter of what that means, so that we could lessen and tamp down the enthusiasm for her. Instead, it's like, how dare you try to tell us or walk into this space thinking you know more about us than we know about ourselves. So that's how it's taken. It's now turned against him, and you could see that he does not know how to go after her. And it's amazing to watch. This man who thrives on being the most powerful person in the room, the ability to sort of whip his supporters into a frenzy, and does not know what to do next.
Meantime, quickly, Susan, I do want to get you on this sort of line of attack or criticism we're seeing coming from the Harris campaign, labeling Trump and his allies as, quote unquote, weird. It seems to be getting to him. He responded this way in an interview just this morning.
They're the weird ones, and if you've ever seen her with the laugh and everything else, that's a weird deal going on there. They're the weird ones. Nobody's ever called me weird. I'm a lot of things, but weird I'm not.
What does that reaction tell you?
I don't know. He's just bonkers, if you ask me. He's maybe not weird, but definitely bonkers. What it tells me is, again, to Basil's point, he does not know what to do with it. And the fact that it flipped so much against them has to be really troubling to the campaign as well, because they're bringing out moves, the Harris team, that there's no way the Trump campaign was ready to do. And maybe the operators are, but Trump certainly is not ready for it. And I think it was brilliant to double down on weird. The stuff that they talk about is weird, and it resonates. Fighting for democracy is very important. I'm not suggesting it's not a good thing to say. But when you just say, look at them, they're weird, like all of a sudden you kind of go like, oh, yeah, I got it.
On that happy note, thank you guys for joining us. Basil Smikle, Susan Del Percio, good to see you.